What's wrong with you people?
Welcome to Not Another Baptist Podcast. My name is Matt Hensley, the pastor of Plymouth Park Baptist Church in Irving, Texas, joined by Dr. Kyle, non-alcoholic beerman, the rural specialist from the big city of
Lubbock, Texas. Lubbock, Texas. Where it is hotter than all Dickens this week.
It is, for sure. Well, Kyle, you know what? I kind of appreciate you. Did you know that?
Some days I feel appreciated.
Yeah, I do. Well, I do appreciate you, but do you know what I don't always appreciate?
What's that?
Back pain.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think I have some bad news for you, Matt, and that is that back pain it is only going to increase from this point on in your life.
It's true. I'm now 40, and I remember, I was like, why does everybody gripe about getting 40 now? I feel like every day my eyesight gets worse. And it's like, what limb is going to hurt when I get out of bed? Not really. I will say Sunday, dude, I was preaching in mid-sermon. I thought, I'm about to see Jesus. I really did. I thought I was having an aneurysm or a stroke or something.
So you know what hit me? So this last week I was at a leadership camp with our kids, and one night we did a volleyball tournament.
By the way.
Yeah. Well, no, I am sympathizing with you through a story.
Okay.
Through
with Kyle, let's go.
We did a volleyball tournament one night, and our team came in second. I was by several years the oldest person on this team. And you know when you realize that you're really old, it's because when you make a play that no one would have thought about, say 15 years ago, and suddenly everybody's like, hey, good hustle, way to go. Appreciate the effort. And it's like, I didn't think that was all that impressive, but apparently when they see an old guy, I don't know, run, they think that that's a big deal.
Actually ran to first base. I'm impressed.
Yeah, you didn't, break a hip or anything. Good job. So yes, I understand. And one day last week, I woke up and somehow, whilst sleeping, I injured my hip. I'm not sure what I did, but I woke up the next morning in a decent amount of pain that lasted all day long. And all I did was sleep. And you know what I think I did? We have a cat that likes to come and sleep kind of in between my legs. And I think that caused me to sleep in a weird position. And I hurt something, sleeping in a weird position. So there you go.
Yeah,
that's where we are in this stage of life, Matt.
Well, I nearly died, but
What? Okay, tell us what happened.
No,
why do you feel like you nearly died?
Our topic today is going to be. You see, what happened was I was preaching, and one of the things that I don't really do very well is preach from the diaphragm, and I usually preach kind of right from my voice. From my throat, and there's a lot of pressure there. And as I get a little louder, a little more fired up, I guess I was busting blood vessels. I don't know what was going on. I really don't know. I just know mid-sermon, the most searing pain shoots through my head, and I get dizzy, lightheaded. I think I'm going down, and I'm in the moment, I'm still preaching. I still there's a moment in the sermon that I can see when it was happening, and I see it, but I didn't really miss anything, didn't skip a beat, and kept going. But there's a moment that I turned just a little bit to the left, and I see my secretary over to the left, and then I'm trying to see where is the stool, because there are stools that our song leaders use and so forth. But I'm thinking, can I go get to that and just sit and finish this thing? But what I did instead is I just kind of got my arms closer to the pew or the pulpit and thought, let's try and finish this thing and tone it down a little bit, because I think you're just about to stroke out. But I survived. And apparently I'd had a migraine most of the last week. And then I think what I really did is just brought all of that back on in the middle of my sermon with just aggravating my head. So
yikes.
But anyway,
well, hey, there is an argument for a pulpit rather than a little table.
Yeah, could you imagine leaning down on that, going down?
It would not go well. Yeah. I almost tipped it over just occasionally, putting too much pressure on it with my hands. So
yeah. He just had a headache, but then he broke his hip falling down the steps. Anyway, 5 symptoms for ministry knots in your church is what we're talking about today. Not Matt having a headache while he was preaching.
Well, let's talk about ministry knots, KNOTS. So much like you can get a knot in your back that you have to have, maybe go to a massage therapist or have your wife press on it until you scream. We can get those knots in ministry, those things that just kind of stick, right?
Yeah. And I know, like, one of the reasons I picked this one is because I literally just posted a graphic earlier today, a desperate call for volunteers
Mm.
because we're growing and we need a lot more people to pitch in and get some of this stuff to move forward with some of our Sunday schools and nursery and AV team and all that kind of stuff. And so I mean, we all know the show has to go on, right? I'm using
Right.
that term kind of loosely, but you're still going to have a worship gathering each and every week. And that means that there's going to be Sunday schools, there's going to be nursery, there's going to be all of that kind of stuff. And so there's needs. And sometimes it seems like you're always asking for and pleading for volunteers, help us do this, blah, 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 whatever it may be. And we're going to answer kind of how to offset these, how to massage these a little bit in a little bit. But that's one of those ministry knots is the ongoing volunteer needs. And prolonged volunteer needs lead to frequent pleas from the pulpit, mostly about the need rather than the outcome. And all of this is coming from a incredible article by Kevin Freeman on Lifeway Research. And so I will say that I think, the plea or what, hey, we need somebody to do this blank, but also sharing like, hey, this is the why behind it, and we'll get into some of this in a little bit, is going to be very helpful there. So it's, you have to ask for volunteers. So we're not saying that you can't ask for volunteers. It's just when it's that constant just drone that I'm doing right now about needing volunteers, we need more people. We need whatever it is, week in and week out. Hey, we need this, we need this, we need this. That becomes a ministry knot, which then leads to number 2, busyness, exhaustion, and a little bit of envy. Kyle, what's
Yeah.
number 2? What's that second knot? KNOT.
Yeah, it's just what you said: busyness, exhaustion, a wee bit of envy. As you are, I think some of this can be the grass is greener syndrome, right? You only see the struggles and the issues in your own ministry, and if you're just exhausted from always trying to recruit volunteers, like you just said, or you just have like kind of that nagging critic that's always at you, you can begin to have that envy of, man, I know this guy at this church, I bet he doesn't deal with that. Let me tell you right now, he absolutely does. Whatever you deal with in your church, more than likely that your friend or that guy on social media that you see posting about how great everything is, they deal with the exact same thing. And if they don't deal with that particular issue, there's going to be an issue they deal with that you don't. And so we need to let that envy die, because that is always a false impression.
Yeah.
Every ministry has its highs, has its immeasurable joys, but it also has its pains.
Yeah.
And when you get busy, when you get tired, that's when you can begin to lose sight of reality and begin to buy into some of those lies. So that goes back to something we talked about a few weeks ago: the importance of taking breaks, taking vacation time to get away, to refresh yourself, to get the rest that you so desperately need.
Yep. Number 3, management mentality over mission mindset.
Ooh,
Management
yeah.
mentality over mission mindset. I mean, we do have an administrative pastor after all, so clearly, I'm just kidding. Mike is a great guy.
Can't you just
Uh,
delegate all that to
yeah,
him? Isn't
yeah.
that
Just you do this so I can do the mission stuff.
yeah.
I call Micah my dream crusher. That's what Micah is. But anyway, sometimes leaders spend so much energy keeping the ship afloat that they forget to chart a course. Man, that is a line. Sometimes
Yeah,
we spend so
so
much
good.
energy just trying to keep that thing moving and alive and the lights on that we really don't tell people where we're going, what we're
Yep.
trying to do, what we're about. And that then leads us to a focus, number 4, on the what rather than the why.
Ooh.
And so instead of casting the vision and recruiting people for a mission, something that you're trying to accomplish, churches with ministry knots are focused on the needs. We need an AV specialist. We need a nursery leader. We need a Sunday school teacher. And
I've seen this somewhere
yeah,
recently. I think.
literally just posted it this morning.
Hey,
and
so in other words, if you're listening to this and you would love to move to Irving, Texas for no pay, and have Matt as your pastor, let him know. He needs volunteers.
that's like 3 strikes. Irving, no pay, and me as your pastor. I'm just kidding. Irving is a great city and some great food here. And aside from the pastor, this is a great church to serve. But when we focus on the what rather than the why, like for example, our worship services, we have kind of really out of the past couple of weeks have been getting a lot of traction behind them and a lot of feedback from them and some new visitors from them. Like we've seen like this actually working. Instead of it's just kind of the stopgap for the people that are home, it's actually become a good front door for our church. And we've had a number of visitors because of it. And so sharing that as like, hey, this is something we want to do well. But at the level we want to do it, we need some people. And this is why. This is a ministry, and we're seeing people ultimately come here in as we saw this past week, get saved because of this growing sense of our ministry here in that area, or the fact that the kids are growing and so forth. So now we're needing some new classes, that kind of stuff. So getting behind the why, that you're getting to disciple kids, being a part of that next generation and so forth, instead of, hey, we need a body to fill this room. We don't care if you like kids or not. We just need somebody here that can have a background check and has breath in their lungs.
That might lead to other issues, which would cause more knots down the road.
Yeah. And finally, number 5, appeals go to people rather than God, or in my case, Facebook. So ministry knots reflect people attempting God's work in their own strength. He goes on to say, God calls us to serve him. He did, after all, create us to do good works in service to him. But God produces the ministry fruit. So forgetting this, churches with many knots often push needs on the people rather than lift them to God. And so how can we find some relief to these ministry knots? Kyle, give us number 1.
So you increase your prayer life. Talk more to God than you do to your people. Or plead to God more than you plead to your people.
Can I gripe?
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough. All right.
Yes,
so
you can gripe
your
to
prayer
God.
life.
Yes, you can gripe.
Yeah.
You can gripe.
Increase your prayer life, man. I mean, ask him. Lord, I shared this on Facebook earlier. Every single week, this is sliding into a slight detour, but every single week and really every single day, I've been praying, God, just one. Just save one. I've been praying every single day for that. And every single Sunday I get up there and I preach, garbage sermons, but I preach as faithful as I can and extend the gospel, share the gospel all throughout it. Stand down there, offer a chance to respond, and nothing. And I know all of that. Like we've talked about it on the podcast. I've posted about it all the time. But like a lot of people, getting a little discouraged every once in a while, like, hey, is it, and I'm going back, what can I improve, all that kind of stuff, but just trying to trust God, continuing to pray, continuing to trust the process, all of that kind of stuff, just pray, trust him to move. And then out of dadgum nowhere, we have in the past 2 weeks had 7 say. And so, hey, keep praying. And maybe your prayers need to be, God, look, we're seeing some growth in our kids area or this or whatever it is. God, I really need some help here. Bring it to God. And sometimes you'll be surprised that, it might not happen tomorrow, but you might get an answer pretty quick. You never know. And so increase your prayer life. And we've talked about this a lot on this show. Encourage rest. Be willing to sacrifice some ministry to salvage your people. This isn't just for you. This is like for your Sunday school teachers, your praise team. In my case, in my staff, I feel obligated to make sure that my guys are taking their vacation time and getting some time away and to recharge, but also our volunteers, because I know sometimes we bemoan that late nights, all of that kind of stuff. Look, every person that's serving in your church is working overtime to serve in your church, at least if they're working, because they have their 9-to-5 job or whatever it might be. And then they're coming up to work in Awana or sing in the choir or teach a Sunday school class. And yes, all of that stuff is good. We're working to God, not man, all of that kind of stuff. But You can really burn yourself out real quick if you're not encouraging them to rest. And then that leads to number three.
So in rest, get creative with this. So if you do like a children's church every Sunday, maybe once a quarter, you have like your family worship gathering where everyone's in, and you can give those children's church workers a break and allow them to be a part of the worship service. Maybe more often, you're encouraging your kids to be in. Find creative ways to give your people some scheduled time off throughout the year, whether that's in life groups or in Sunday night, whatever your rhythm is. Find a way to give your people rest by scheduling some intentional downtime in those things.
Yeah. Next on a way to do this, to offset some of those knots, to massage them a bit, is encourage a rallying around the mission. Remind people of the mission that God has called us to do. Your church may have a mission statement. Remind them often of it, because at its heart, all of those mission statements should really get to the core of our call to make disciples. That's why we're still here. And so we want to connect each of those volunteer roles ultimately, whether it is our more outward facing, you're out in the parking lot, greeting people, or you're behind the scenes, you're ultimately helping us make disciples. We're all going back to that mission, what God has called us to do, whatever that is. And then finally, celebrate often. Any win you get, celebrate, Pastor. Any chance you get to celebrate a volunteer, celebrate them, Pastor. I know for us, we've recently been encouraging, hey, has anybody told you today God loves you? Like a simple way to have almost like a nugget of a gospel presentation, where has anybody told you, Kyle, God loves you? No. Well, let me be the first to tell you that God loves you so much that he sent his one and only son to live a perfect life for you, die a sacrificial death for you, rise again victoriously for you, and will save you if you turn to him in faith. I'd love to talk with you about that, or you can go and talk to my pastor. And I offer to give them my business card or invite cards, all that kind of stuff. Well, lo and behold, some of our people start doing that. And so one of the greatest things you could do is celebrate that, share that, and you'll get a lot more of what you celebrate. And so,
that's right.
Kyle, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, what you touched on there at the end is really important. What you celebrate gets repeated, right? So listen, a great example of this, on the Revitalize and Replant podcast a couple weeks ago, Mark Clifton had Jonathan Smith, the revitalization guru for Texas Baptists, on to talk about how he leads churches to celebrate baptisms. That's a really good episode to go back and listen to. It can spark some ideas in how to celebrate baptisms. Because Mark, or Matt, this. If you're celebrating baptisms and your folks are getting excited about seeing people come to faith in Christ, that fuels the mission, right? So if you're celebrating it, that helps them rally around the mission, which helps even those difficult volunteer positions, can help fuel them because they realize the fruit of what they're doing in the life of your church.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kyle, I hope you have no ministry knots. I don't know what you do as a ministry, but anyway, I hope you don't have any knots as you do it. But we appreciate y'all for listening in. And hey, remember, we love you. We're grateful for you. I hope this was a help to you. We're going to link in the show notes to this article and also share it on our platforms, and would love for you to check it out, because there's a lot of really kind of some gospel bombs in it, some truth bombs that you need to consider as you lead your churches, whether you're on your own with an army of volunteers or you got a staff and volunteers, all of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of wisdom in that article. We encourage you to check it out. But until next time, may your coffee be as black as night and as bold as the gospel we declare.
What's wrong with you people?